Greetings and Advent blessings to you. My name is Brandon Grafius, and I'm recording from Mason, Michigan, a little bit south of Lansing. I'm Professor of Biblical Studies and Academic Dean at Ecumenical Theological Seminary in Detroit, and the author of the recent book, Scared by the Bible, The Roots of Horror in Scripture. The exploration of this book, and really most of my academic work over the last 15 years, is centering around the question of why there is so much horror in the Bible. I start with the observation that we often don't like to think of there being horror stories in the Bible, but when we really stop and look at it, there are monster stories, there are stories of cataclysmic floods, there are wars and revenge and murders, and even the cosmic horror that we see when we encounter the ark or when Job is confronted by God from the whirlwind at the end of the book of Job. All of these are instances of the Bible taking us out of our comfort zone, going beyond what we maybe like to think of it as being, of just a book that has simple wisdom and ethical commands for us to respond to and learn to live better lives. The horror in the Bible is clearly doing something different. And so I respond to that observation by asking what it might be doing. If the biblical authors had wanted to write a book that had nothing in it but nice people doing nice things to each other and lots of sunshine and rainbows, they could have written that book, but that's not the book we have. So I ask if that might be less of a problem and more of a chance for us to listen to something that we often don't like to listen to. My thesis is that horror is one of the genres that best pushes us to the limits and beyond of our imagination, what helps us to think of the world in new ways. I think the story of horror is the story of our normal lives being invaded by a monster or something else that disrupts all of that normalcy and forces us to look at whether our normal lives are really the way we want our lives to be, and whether there might be things in the universe that we don't understand, can't comprehend, and maybe aren't supposed to be able to get our minds fully around. So when Job asks for the answers to the universe from God, God responds with speech really tapping into the ideas of Lovecraftian cosmic horror, where the universe is bigger than you can imagine and understand, and somehow within that limitation of our human minds are the answers that we're seeking. Answers that we can't get to, but which we nevertheless keep pushing towards. Horror is one of the genres that pushes us to continually think about that, or continues us to experience through our fear and our return to normalcy what it might be like to be a part of a cosmos that's bigger than we understand. I think religion is at its best when it's pushing us to imagine the world in new ways, when it's trying to help us move beyond the limits of what we can think about to get at some deep truth about God, about the cosmos, that we might reject or not be able to comprehend just if it were presented to us propositionally. So instead we have these tales of horror that ask us to experience that fear and listen to it. So I have come to approach the horror of the Bible as less a problem to be solved than an experience, than a communication to be listened to. You might have heard before that the Latin root of monster, monstrare, is literally message. It's the same root from which we get demonstrate, so that monsters are a message coming from the divine, telling us something. So this Advent season, I encourage you to sit with some of those darker spaces of the Bible, even some of the darker spaces of the Advent story, and try to receive the message that they might be giving to you. Thank you so much. Advent blessings.
This has been a production of Trinity Episcopal Cathedral in Portland, Oregon. Music for this podcast was performed by James Walton. For more information about Trinity and our community, go to www.trinity-episcopal.org.